Hi, hello and welcome back to F1 Challenge VB. My name is Mephisto and our journey through the history of Formula 1 continues today with the 9th and final round of the 1966 season, the Mexican Grand Prix. It was held on the 23rd of October, it had 19 entries, 18 of them took part in the race with 9 ending up retiring. The race consisted of 65 laps completed in 2 hours, 6 minutes and 35 seconds. John Surtees started the race from pole with Clark in second, who retired on lap 9 thanks to a broken gearbox. Ginther was third on the grid, Brabham fourth, Rindt started from fifth but retired on lap 32 with a broken suspension, and Denny Hulme started the race from sixth. Surtees had a superb race and won the Mexican Grand Prix from Brabham, who climbed up 2 places to finish second, 7.88 seconds after Surtees. Hulme went from 6th to 3rd and was 1 lap down. Gurney climbed up from 9th to 5th, he was 1 lap down as well. And rounding off the top 6 was Joe Bonnier, who started 12th and he was 2 laps behind. Ginther was the fastest man of the race, posting a time of 1 minute 53.75 seconds. Here we are once again at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, where a lap starts off with a very long run down into turn 1, a long right-hander that tightens as you go. This leads into turns 2 and 3, which form a tight right-left chicane. Next are turns 4 and 5, forming a medium speed left-right chicane. Careful though, as the right-hander is tighter than the left-hander. Up next is turn 6, a tight 180-degree, highly banked right-hand hairpin. Be super careful with power application through here. Turns 7 and 8 are next and they form a left-right chicane, which leads into a series of S-turns that end with turn 13. Lastly, we come into turn 14, a long 180-degree fast right-hander that brings us around onto the main straight, and that is a lap around the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. And here we are in qualifying for the Mexican Grand Prix, coming around to set our first time the lap, a 1:57.136. That's about 5 seconds slower than Joe Bonnier's pole time, so let's hope that we can improve on this. That would be absolutely fantastic as we come around to set to try and improve, and that is a 1:54.234, which is absolutely fantastic. I tried to go even faster than this, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. I started making mistakes, as I generally tend to do, and that's pretty much it for qualifying, as we now take a look at the previous Mexican Grand Prix winners. Haven't won here yet, but hopefully that day will come soon, preferably today. If we do win here, we can win the championship, which, well, would be very, very nice. And we have Jack Brabham on pole with Graham Hill in second, and then we have Bonnier third, fourth Jim Clark, followed by Jackie Stewart in fifth, and rounding off the top 6 is Guy Ligier. In 7th we have Andy Higgs, followed by Jochen Rindt in 8th. 9th is Trevor Taylor, followed by Ludovico Scarfiotti in 10th. Denny Hulme 11th, Mike Parks 12th. 13th is Lorenzo Bandini, followed by Dan Gurney in 14th. In 15th we have Joe Siffert, followed by Richie Ginther in 16th. Then in 17th is Bob Bondurant. 18th Chris Irwin, 19th Mike Spence, 20th Ronnie Bucknam, 21st Chris Amon. Bob Anderson is 22nd, 23rd is Chris Lawrence. Geki Russo 24th, 25th Moises Solana, 26th Peter Arundel, 27th Phil Hill, 28th Giancarlo Baghetti, 29th Ennis Ireland, 30th John Surtees, 31st Pedro Rodriguez, and Trevor Taylor is 32nd. So that is the lineup for the Mexican Grand Prix. If I could talk, that is the lineup for the Mexican Grand Prix, the final round of the 1966 season. Hopefully it's going to be a good race for Andy. Obviously we didn't do too well this season. Retired quite a lot, only managed to finish 2 races so far, but hopefully we can make this another one of those good races where we can finish. And again, hopefully we can win, which if we do, we actually will take the championship, which would be quite nice as we now move up into 6th. Managed to get around a couple of cars as we were running down into turn 1, but I go a little bit wide, and I think Guy Ligier is trying to have a look at me, but I managed to keep him behind me, at least for the time being, as we try to chase down Jackie Stewart, as we now take a look at a replay of the start. It was a fairly decent start on my end. That's kind of a rare occurrence, and we even managed to gain a couple of positions as we come into turn 1 here, which is always nice obviously, but we would want to do even more. As I said, if we win this race we will win the championship, so that would be very nice to do, as Rindt manages to barge his way through and moves up into 6th, so we drop down to 7th, but we will try and keep as close to Rindt as possible and maybe go for a pass when the time comes. We now move on to lap 2 here, coming into this tight hairpin. Try to get around someone, but didn't quite work, as Ludovico Scarfiotti somehow manages to squeeze his way past, so we now drop down to 8th. We need to try and catch back. Then as we come through this chicane, Scarfiotti for some reason decides to brake a lot, and I crashed into him. I think he spun around, but he didn't retire, so that's good. We now move on to lap 3 here, and Guiligier manages to overtake me for a brief second and then proceeds to drive into the arm code there, which allows us to keep 7th position for the time being, as we take a look at a replay of Dan Gurney, who is having some problems with his suspension as he comes into the hairpin there. We saw one of the Hondas, but 30 pulls to the side and is out of the race. And towards the end of the lap we see Guiligier coming into the pits to retire for whatever reason, not quite sure. Maybe he damaged his car somehow when he crashed into the arm cone trying to overtake me. And we now move on to lap 4, and I'm just about to overtake Jim Clark for 6th position, and that's a pretty easily done move. Can we overtake Stuart through the right-hander? Not quite, as I go very wide through here, and that allows Clark to regain his position, sliding the car through the left-hander there and having a very good run out of the corner and overtaking Clark and Stewart as well. So now we are 4th, which is absolutely fantastic, chasing after Graham Hill at the moment, coming through the hairpin, and Stewart manages to squeeze his way through there. Once again, I try to be very, very careful every time I go into that hairpin, because the slightest mistake can spin the car, and that's not good. Anyway, we have a replay of Joe Bonnier here pulling to the side of the track. Apparently he has some problems with his brakes. He tries to use the arm code there to slow the car down, and a little bit of glitch or something there, but that is him out of the race as well. Still on lap 4 here, trying to get around Jim Clark, and unfortunately in doing so Denny Holm manages to overtake us, so we drop down to 3rd, which isn't ideal obviously. Now starting lap 5, and I caught up to Jim Clark again, past him, and we're looking at Denny Holm. Hopefully we can regain 5th. That would be obviously very good as we come into turn 1 once again, but couldn't quite pull it off. I then managed to overtake Jackie Stewart and Holm coming into the hairpin. However, that was very scary. I braked very late, and I decided that dive bomb was a bit unfair, so I decided to let Denny Holm back past, but hopefully we'll be able to catch right back up as we come around to start lap 6 here, and we are closing in on Denny Holm as we cross the finish line, the start finish line, and we are back up in 4th, once again chasing after Graham Hill. That's absolutely fantastic. Hopefully obviously we can catch up. Lap 6, still lap 6, and Holm manages to squeeze his way past me through the hairpin there, and we are now back down in 5th as we take a look at a replay of Jim Clark, who has a problem with his suspension. He pulls off the track to the side there, parks his car, and he is out of the Mexican Grand Prix. And now on lap 7 we managed to overtake Denny Holm once again, and we are having a look at Jochen Rindt for 2nd position. This is very good. Hopefully we can do it, and yes we do. He brakes a little bit early, coming into turn 1. However, I then and go very slow through the corner, and that allows Rindt to overtake us once again. So we drop to third, now coming through the hairpin once again, and once again I get overtaken by Denny Holm through there. It's really hard to keep the car going fast through there, but oh well, what can you do? Moving on to lap 8 now, and I'm trying for an overtake on Denny Holm once again, and we do it quite well. So we move back up into third, and so we should try and get back on Jochen Rindt's pace. However, it didn't work out too well. We dropped back down to fourth, and now Lorenzo Bandini is trying to overtake me once again as we come into the hairpin. And yep, Lorenzo Bandini once again overtakes us. Well, not just Lorenzo Bandini, everyone manages to overtake us through that hairpin. It's very difficult to go fast, as I keep saying. And here we are starting lap 10, and we just managed to post the fastest lap of the race, which obviously is quite nice. But I'm now trying to overtake as many cars as possible. Can we also take Jochen Rindt? No, this means third for the moment, but it's okay. However, I go very wide through turn 1 there, and that allows Denny Holm to overtake us once again. That's not very good, but we'll try to overtake him again as we take a look at a replay of Andy setting the fastest lap of the entire race, which is very good. And now we are rushing towards the hairpin once again. Lorenzo Bandini is right beside us. He kind of pulls in front of me. I try to avoid him. That I touch the grass that spins my car around, and then in a act of stupidity, really, I try to drive straight over the dirt mound that separates the two halves of the hairpin, and I got my car stuck. So that is the end of our race here at the Mexican Grand Prix. Quite disappointing, obviously. And here is the replay of that. Bandini cuts across our front. I try to avoid him, and that causes my car to spin. And here I am trying to do the dumbest thing possible and driving over a very thin strip of a dirt mound, which obviously won't work ever, not with a car that has such a which is so low up to the ground. And then I managed to kill my engine, so that is really it for our race. Anyway, on the very next lap, on lap 15, Graham Hill pulls to the side and he is out of the race, apparently with a brake problem. Also on lap 15 we see John Surtees here, who apparently has a problem with his suspension. He pulls to the side and is out of the race as well. Still on lap 15, and we have a replay of Innes Ireland, also with a suspension problem. A lot of suspension issues today here. He pulls to the side. One of the Lotuses crashes into him, and he is out of the race as well. And we have a replay of Chris Irwin, coming into the pits and retiring from the race. I almost said Eddie Irvine, which would be interesting to see in 1966, but yeah, not gonna happen. We move forward and we have a replay of Giancarlo Baghetti, also with a suspension problem. He pulls to the side and is out of the Mexican Grand Prix as well. And then towards the end of the race, we see Joe Siffert coming into the pits to retire. However, he managed to complete at least 90% of race distance, so he will be classified as a finisher. But he pulls into the pits and is out of the race. And here is another retirement. Not quite sure who it is. It is a Ferrari, the number 6 Ferrari. He is out, but I think that last replay was the person who actually completed 90% of resistance. But anyway, we now take a look at Jack Brabham coming around to win the 1966 Mexican Grand Prix. Denny Holm second, Bandini third, fourth Rindt, fifth Parks, Richie Ginster sixth. We managed to post the fastest lap of the race, but obviously that didn't quite help, as we retired about halfway through the race. And here are all the retirements. not... Oh, actually here are the retirements. The previous page were the rest of the finishers. Quite an interesting race, quite bad for Andy, but hey, what can you do, right? Anyway, let's move on. And here are the career statistics. This was Andy's 150th Grand Prix. His best start is from first, has 16 pole positions, has set 29 fastest laps. His best finishes in first, has completed 96 races, 75 of them in the points, has won 44 Grand Prix, 4 at the Indianapolis 500, 6 in Monaco, has 8 championships under his belt, has scored a total of 516 points, has retired 54 times, has experienced 3,181 out of 3,935 laps, has 7 bronze trophies, 16 silver trophies, 44 gold trophies, and as an extension 44 podiums. And here is one final look at the championship standings. Jochen Rindt manages to win the 1966 Drivers' Championship with Jack Brabham in second, Bandini third, fourth is Andy Higgs, fifth Denny Hulme, Graham Hill sixth. The last person to score points is Jackie Stewart down in 22nd, and bringing up the bottom of the driver's standings is Giancarlo Baghetti down in 32nd. And I made a little bit of a mistake in the second half of the season. I forgot to mention that John Taylor died during the German Grand Prix, so I kind of I rectified my little mistake there, but yeah, that was kind of my fault. Sorry about that. Anyway, let's move on to the Constructors, and here we have Ferrari winning the Constructors Championship from Cooper, who finished second, Brabham third, Bruce McLaren Motor Racing fourth, fifth R.09 Racing Organization, sixth Team Lotus. The last team to score points this season are Honda Research and Development Company in 15, and bringing up the bottom of the constructor standings are Amon Racing down in 19th. So that was the Mexican Grand Prix. Not a particularly good race, especially not for Andy nor Bruce McLaren, but sometimes you do stupid things, I guess. I really don't know why I thought at that time that it would be a good idea to try and cross over something that it was quite clearly not a good idea, but oh well, it happened, I guess. And before I wrap up this video, let's take a look at the team and driver changes for the 1967 season. And we'll start as usual with Ferrari. Their roster will be slightly different, with only Bandini and Parks remaining from the current lineup, with Surtees joining Honda and Scott Fioti calling it quits. Over at Cooper, only Rindt will remain from the current lineup, with Amon joining Ferrari alongside Bandini and Parks, Günther making his move to Anglo-American Racers, and Solana moving to Lotus. Rindt will be joined by ex-Lotus driver Pedro Rodriguez and rookies Jackie X and Alan Rees. However, there are rumors that Cooper would like to bring back Andy Hicks to their ranks, in which case he will most likely replace Rees. After a long career with the team, Graham Hill decided to leave Owen Racing for Lotus. However, Jackie Stewart decided to stay and will be joined by Mike Spence. The lineup over at Lotus will consist of Jim Clark, Graham Hill, Moises Solana, with Arundel and Russo retiring from the sport, and Rodriguez, as stated earlier, moving to Cooper. Brabham will have mostly the same roster as in 1966, with only Irwin moving to Rec Parnell. This means that Hulme and Brabham himself will be driving in 1967. Rec Parnell will also be hosting a rookie next season, and his name is Pierce Courage, whilst Baghetti will be leaving the sport. Rob Walker's team will be made up by Joe Siffert, just like in 1966. The same goes for DW Racing Enterprises and Bob Anderson, although they did express interest in trying to get Higgs to join instead. Ronnie Bucknam will be retiring, leaving Honda with Surtees as their sole driver. After a horrible season, McLaren decided to drop Andy Higgs and drive the car himself. Bernard White Racing will be returning for yet another season in Formula 1, with rookie David Hobbs at the wheel, whilst Innes Ireland will be taking a break. Joe Bonnier decided to rename his Anglo-Swiss racing team to Joachim Bonnier Racing Team. Other than that, nothing will change. He will still be the only driver in his team. Team Chamaco Collect will not be returning in 1967, and neither will Bob Bondurant. Guy Ligier will be returning, however, and just like last season, he will be the only driver. Shannon Racing and J.A. Pierce will be dropping from the sport, leaving Trevor Taylor and Chris Lawrence without a drive for next season. Ginther will be joining Dan Gurney at his Anglo-American Racers team, whilst his former co-driver Phil Hill will be missing in 1967. Having lost John Taylor at the German Grand Prix, David Bridges decided to pull out of the sport. There are a number of new teams joining us in 1967 as well. Among them are French team Matra. Their lineup will consist of Frenchman Jean-Pierre Beltois and Frenchman Johnny Servoz-Gavin, although there are some rumors spreading around that they would much rather have Higgs instead of Gavin. Also joining us on the grid in 1967 is American Mike Fisher with a privately entered car. John Love decided to return to Formula 1 and will be driving as a privateer as well. LDS and Sam Tingle will be back in 1967 as well. And we have two more teams joining us next season. They are Scuderia Scribante with Dave Charlton as their driver and privateer Lucky Botha. So those are the team and driver changes for 1967. There are a lot of new teams and drivers joining, which should make 1967 another interesting season. Aside from that, there will be a couple of rule changes coming next season as well, one of which affects the scoring system, but I will talk about that in more detail at the start of the new season. Other than that, there's not much more to talk about, so I guess I should end the video since it's starting to get quite long. With that in mind, this is the end of the Mexican Grand Prix, the end of the 1966 season, which quite frankly was horrible for Andy, but hopefully things will change in 67. And that is the end of this video. After uploading this, I will give you guys a few more hours to vote for next season's team, so make sure to check the link in the description if you want to have a say in what team Andy will be driving in the next season. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay sharp.